I still remember the cold, hard tiles of the hospital floor beneath my bare feet, when I decided to discharge myself earlier than expected. 3 weeks of treatment for acute pneumonia at St. Luke's just outside Chicago had drained nearly all my strength. There were nights I thought I wouldn't live to see the sunrise. But that morning, Dr. Harper gently said, "You're not fully recovered, but you can continue your treatment at home. Be careful and get plenty of rest." Her smile was faint, as if there was still something she wasn't certain about, but I didn't care. All I could think about was my husband. Liam, the man I'd been with for the past 9 years. I missed his voice reading by my bedside each night, missed how he always reminded the nurses to bring me extra blankets, and most of all, I missed our home in Evanston. The white wooden house I had bought with my grandfather's inheritance. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise him, wanted to walk in and see him stunned with joy. So naive. The yellow cab stopped in front of the 2-story house with freshly trimmed grass. I slowly opened the door and pulled out my small suitcase. My back still ached, but excitement pushed the pain aside. I had barely stepped out when my heart froze. Liam's silver SUV was parked in the driveway, not unusual. He often worked from home on Tuesdays, but right behind it was a deep red sedan. My mother's car. Joanne's. I hadn't seen it here in the past 3 weeks, and she hadn't mentioned visiting today. She had stopped by a few times while I was hospitalized, bringing soup or laundry, but always gave me a heads up. I took a deep breath. Maybe she brought food for Liam or came to tidy up the house before I returned. The thought of the 2 people I loved most waiting for me inside warmed my heart. I opened the front door gently. Each step felt like I was gliding on quiet joy. I set my suitcase by the wall and walked down the hallway. No sound from the TV. No music. But there was a sound from upstairs. My body locked in place. A laugh sharp and unmistakable. My mother's laugh. The one she used with doctors in waiting rooms or after her 3rd martini at charity galas. I gripped the stair railing. Maybe I was mistaken. Maybe the meds were still clouding my head. But my heart knew better. I climbed the stairs, each step stabbing into my recovering lungs. I tried not to cough. Tried to stay steady. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Our bedroom. Mine and Liam's. The one with the ivory sheets I had changed less than a month ago. Just a few steps closer, and I heard the sentence that shattered me beyond repair. "Don't worry, Liam, Charlie won't find out. As long as we're careful." The way she said my name, like I was some oblivious fool, made my head spin. Pushed the door open. What I saw paralyzed me. I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, my hands trembling so badly I couldn't hold the thin blanket wrapped around my shoulders. My eyes locked on the 2 figures in front of me. My mother, Joanne, 56 years old, and Liam, the man I once believed was my safe haven. My mother was sitting on top of him, hair tousled, white blouse barely buttoned at the waist. Liam's hand was on her hip, his face consumed with desire. They were too lost in each other to notice I had seen it all. Until a sharp gasp escaped my throat. Liam turned first. His eyes widened, his mouth hung open like he was about to speak. My mother froze. Panic flickered in her gaze as she slid off him, hastily pulling down the hem of her shirt. "Charlie?" Liam stammered, reaching for a blanket to cover himself. Why are you here? The doctor said Friday." My mother chimed in, her voice soft like she was soothing a child who saw something they shouldn't have. "Sweetheart, I thought you were still at the hospital. You shouldn't be walking around so soon." I clenched the door frame to keep from collapsing. Each second passed like a blade. On my bed, my voice was raspy but crystal clear. While I was lying in a hospital bed barely clinging to life, you 2 chose my bedroom to do this? Liam scrambled to pull up his pants, his voice shaking. You have to understand. This isn't what I wanted. It was a mistake." I turned to my mother. "You think this was a mistake too?" She hesitated, her eyes darted away from mine, but there wasn't enough shame on her face to mask what she had just done. I stepped back, air drained from my lungs. A sudden cough hit me hard, and I had to grab the stair railing to steady myself. Liam rushed forward. "You're not well. Let me help you downstairs." I raised my hand to stop him. Don't touch me. My knees gave out on the first step. I clung to the wooden frame like it was the only thing keeping me from falling into an abyss. Every part of me was screaming, but I stayed silent. They hovered above me, calling my name like nothing had happened. Charlie, please, let me explain. I made a mistake, but I still love you, I swear. To look up. Desperation darkened Liam's face as he lingered near the doorway. And my mother, the woman who once taught me right from wrong, was fixing her collar, avoiding my eyes like a child caught breaking something irreplaceable. Love me. Liam, you slept with my mother, the woman who gave birth to me. Do you even understand what that means? And you, Mom, of all the men in the world, you chose your daughter's husband? She looked like she was about to say something, but stayed silent. I slowly walked down the stairs, each step crushing the trust I had clung to for years. I spoke clearly and firmly. Both of you, get out of my house. Liam panicked. You can't just kick me out. This is my house too. No, Liam, this is the house I bought with my grandfather's inheritance. I only invited you to live here. You own nothing here. That was the last time I saw her face before closing the door. For good. I don't know if this was the first time or just the first time I caught you, but no matter how many times, it's all ruined now. I need rest, and when I come back, I don't want to see either of you here. Then I walked away, leaving them frozen on the staircase. No footsteps followed, no more excuses. Just the sound of my bedroom door, once a place of warmth, still hanging open, like a wound that couldn't close. I lay on the living room couch the entire afternoon. My body was still weak, but my mind had never been clearer. The initial shock had faded into something else, observation. Every word, every glance between them after they were caught played in my head like a scene rewinding. Liam sat silently at the dining table, occasionally glancing toward me, his eyes hollow, not from remorse, but fear. As for my mother, she locked herself in the basement office, avoiding me all afternoon, as if I had done something wrong by coming home early. I left them alone. I wanted to see how long they could keep up the act. By dusk, when the evening light cast a soft orange hue on the living room wall, I heard slow footsteps coming down the stairs. Liam, holding a glass of water, walked over. He tried to smile, a twisted, bitter thing that didn't mask anything. Charlie, I know you're hurting. I know nothing I say can undo what happened. But I really want you to know. It didn't start the way you think. I looked him in the eye. It didn't start on my bed, right? So where did it start? In the garage? On the kitchen counter? He swallowed hard and looked away. Dizziness clung to me, but anger broke through, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. Let me ask again, how long? He didn't answer immediately. Then his voice dropped. About 1.5 years. I let out a sharp breath. Since I was hospitalized? No, he said softly. Since your father's funeral. I closed my eyes. The funeral came rushing back like a nightmare I thought I had buried. Me in a black dress, holding Liam's hand as we walked past the rows of mourners. My mother hadn't cried. She just sat there, composed, as if attending a high society gala. I had been the one managing every detail, from the photo display to the guest list, the memorial music, and even the temporary estate arrangement. Liam had been right by my side, nodding, comforting, supporting. But while I bowed to greet my father's old friends, my mother and the man I trusted most had chosen to console each other. My fingers dug into the armrest as I forced myself upright. So while I was burying my father, the two of you were quietly starting something behind my back. He lowered his head, no denial, no excuses. I didn't have the strength to scream. I walked straight down to the basement. My mother was sitting in a chair, a half glass of wine in front of her. When she heard the door, she looked up. Her expression was calm, but her eyes couldn't hide the fatigue. You found out, didn't you? She asked quietly. She sighed, eyes drifting down to the wool rug beneath her feet. After your father died, Liam came by the house often. At first we just talked, then one night we had some wine and it happened. It happened? I repeated slowly, my voice laced with acid. Like spilling a drink? Or like accidentally slipping into your daughter's bed? She blinked. I know it's unforgivable, but you have to understand, at that time I was very lonely. I'd just lost my husband and you were drowning in work, planning the funeral, handling everything. I felt empty. Liam was gentle, attentive. One thing led to another, and just kept leading to more things for a year and a half? I saw it in her eyes. There was nothing left to deny. I turned away and walked upstairs, my voice echoing down the cold hallway. You should pack your things. I don't want to see you here tomorrow. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop, hands trembling as I typed in my password, but my mind had never been clearer. I didn't know when I had become this version of myself. But I knew one thing for sure. From this moment on, I was no longer the Charlie who believed in family loyalty. I started planning that very night, while the house was silent, and the two betrayers assumed I had passed out from exhaustion. They had no idea I was lying in the dark, eyes wide open, ears tuned to every movement. Not a word passed between them. That wasn't guilt. It was fear. And I knew, if I did nothing, they'd keep living in their dirty little cocoon, comfortable and undisturbed. No, I wouldn't let that happen. The next morning, I sent an encrypted message to Arthur Bellamy, my father's personal attorney. A cautious, discreet man who had worked with our family for nearly 20 years. My father once said, if anyone could keep a secret better than a safe, it was Arthur. The message was just a few lines. I need to see you in private. No contact through email or the old number. An hour later, Arthur called back from an unknown number. His voice was as steady as the last time I saw him, at the estate meeting after my father's funeral. Charlie, something's wrong, isn't it? I need the truth, Uncle Arthur, as soon as possible. We arranged to meet the next afternoon at a secondary legal office in Wilmette, a place my father used for handling sensitive documents. Joanne and Liam thought I was too emotionally wrecked to remember my own name, let alone take action. I showed up deliberately frail, pale skin, thick coat, dark circles under my eyes, but my gaze was sharper than it had ever been. Arthur pulled out a chair for me and set a cup of hot tea in front of me. You can speak now. What's going on, Charlie? You once said my father updated his will a few months before he passed, but I've never seen that version. He paused, then slowly said, because it disappeared. I leaned back. My heartbeat slowed, like everything was starting to become clear. Arthur continued, your father came to see me about 7 weeks before he passed. He brought a revised version of his will. In it, Joanne's share was reduced to 20%. 60% was moved into a trust fund under your full control upon turning 35. The rest was allocated to the charity he was building. But after he died, only the old version was used. Correct. We couldn't find the updated original, only the older copy in the bank records. And your mother insisted it was his final wish. I closed my eyes. A memory rushed back. My mother insisting on keeping the keys to his personal safe after the funeral. I thought she did it out of grief. Now I knew better. I want to know, I said, did my father know she was unfaithful? Arthur hesitated. His face grew heavy. Yes. He suspected it throughout his treatment. Eventually he confirmed it. The man was an old business associate, Carl Madsen. I nearly dropped my tea. Carl was someone who used to visit when I was in college, always bringing Italian bread at Christmas, calling me his second daughter. I couldn't believe it. Arthur slid a file folder toward me. Here's the evidence he gathered. Texts, photos, account statements. Your father was going to confront them, but in the end he chose a different route. He revised his will and severed all ties with Carl. I flipped through the documents, saw my mother's signature in an email to Carl, ambiguous messages, photos of the two of them at a resort in Colorado. Right when my father was hospitalized. You think she knew about the revised will? She wasn't just aware, Arthur said. We uncovered evidence that she erased it intentionally. I looked up. We recovered an audio recording from Carl's former assistant. It includes the two of them discussing a document that should never surface. Joanne's voice is unmistakable. and the recording is legally admissible. It was made internally for legal compliance. My hands went cold, but my head burned hot. My mother hadn't just slept with my husband. She had betrayed a dying husband and manipulated her own daughter's inheritance. Arthur placed a hand on the file. What do you want to do now? I don't want a lawsuit. I want everything taken back. I want them to hand it over themselves. Arthur smiled, a quiet smile, like he'd been waiting for that answer all along. Then, Charlie, let's begin. I returned to the house in Evanston like a ghost, quiet but with a storm churning inside. Joanne and Liam still believed I wasn't strong enough to fight back. Good. They didn't question it when I spent most of my time in the bedroom, eyes blank, body weak, barely speaking, not blaming anyone. But they didn't know that every night I was working with Arthur Bellamy and the legal team he had personally assigned to me. Within a week, I had completed all paperwork to revise the estate plan and personal inheritance rights. Liam and Joanne's names were removed from all joint accounts, from the investment funds I had once set up with them, even from the life insurance, where I had mistakenly listed husband as the beneficiary. I transferred everything into a new foundation, the Edward Foundation, named after my father's middle name. This would be the legacy he truly intended to leave behind. At the same time, Arthur and I reached out to every business partner connected to Liam. People he had approached only through his ties to my family. A few coincidental meetups at conferences, a couple of friendly lunches in downtown Chicago. Each one had a purpose. Dismantling Liam's access to the financial network I had once opened for him. One deal in particular stood out. His contract with Darrell and Myers, a finance firm that gave Liam a project coordinator role purely because I had vouched for him. I called Darrell, an intelligent and pragmatic man who had deeply respected my father, and sent him a full summary of Arthur's findings. Liam had falsified his contribution percentage, concealed the fact that the seed money came from the Bennett family trust, and misrepresented his financial capabilities. Charlie, Darrell said flatly, with this evidence, we'll terminate Liam's contract immediately. Thank you for the timely warning. The next day I called Liam into the home office. He walked in with a cup of coffee, his face lit with hope. You wanted to talk? I'm so glad, Charlie. I know I messed up, but if you give me a chance, I raised my hand to stop him. Sit down. This isn't about marriage, it's about finances. He blinked. Finances? I slid a stack of documents across the table. I've changed the entire inheritance. You're cut out of anything tied to my family's money. From now on, you'll live off your own abilities, if you even have any. Liam's face went pale. Charlie, you can't do this. I gave you my youth, building everything together. Don't you remember? I fixed my eyes on him, making sure he saw every word I meant. You spent your youth sneaking around with my mother. I built everything. Maybe you should learn the difference. He frantically flipped through the papers, then stammered. At least the investment firm is still... I spoke to Darrell, I cut in. They pulled your role this morning. I sent the evidence. They didn't need more reasons. Liam collapsed into the chair. His coffee spilled and he didn't even notice. I watched the scene, feeling no satisfaction, only emptiness. As for Joanne, with her I needed a different approach. I invited her to my temporary apartment in Gold Coast, a quiet, detached place, no longer our old home. I arranged everything like a reconciliation, tea, cookies, a falsely gentle atmosphere. My mother arrived neatly dressed, still wearing my father's old pearl earrings, like a relic of a power she no longer held. Charlie, she spoke first, I know I was wrong, but I'm still your mother. We can't just... Cut it, I said, placing a folder in front of her. I don't need an apology, I need your signature. She looked down, squinting as she read. Transfer of control over disputed assets, according to the original will? I smiled. Either you sign it, or Arthur files a lawsuit citing intentional inheritance interference, evidence concealment, and collusion with Carl Madsen. She blanched. You would do that to your own mother? I would. And if you think losing money is scary, wait until your friends learn you betrayed your dying husband and slept with your son-in-law right after his funeral. Nothing more needed to be said. She signed. Her hand shook so badly she had to sign twice to get it right. I gathered the documents. Don't worry, you'll still have enough to live on. But no more control. My father's network is back in the hands of someone worthy. Joanne pushed back her chair, eyes red, and for the first time, there was no arrogance. You won't forgive me, will you? Forgiveness was never part of the plan. Justice was. 3 weeks after I forced Joanne to sign the transfer agreement, I sent out 2 messages, one to her, one to Liam. Both were identical, just one line. Saturday night, 7 o'clock, dinner at the Evanston house. I have something to say. I intentionally chose the old house, the one my father called the last stronghold of family. The dining room remained untouched since his passing, a crystal chandelier, an oak table with 8 chairs, and his portrait framed at the head of the table. I had it thoroughly cleaned, laid out the tablecloth Joanne once hid away, and played the classical symphony my father loved. That night the house felt as if he was still there. Liam arrived first. He wore a pressed blue shirt, clean-shaven, holding a bottle of red wine. When I opened the door he smiled, as if everything had somehow softened. You invited me to dinner. I'm really glad, Charlie, truly. He looked around, a bit confused. You kept everything the same? Tonight is to honor the one who deserves to be remembered, I said. Joanne arrived 10 minutes later, in a black silk dress, wearing the old pearl necklace, her usual attempt to project elegance. Seeing Liam already there made her expression falter, but she recovered quickly. Thank you for inviting me. A family dinner is something I've always hoped for. I seated them across from each other. I sat at the head of the table, under warm amber lighting. Wine was poured. The first course was served by a private caterer I'd hired. I didn't cook, and I had no intention of serving. We ate the appetizer in silence. I let them have a few bites, making sure no one could excuse themselves from the table easily. Then I set down my fork and knife and raised my eyes. Thank you both for coming. Tonight's dinner isn't about healing, it's about closure. Joanne froze, her wineglass suspended mid-air. Liam furrowed his brow. Closure for what? I turned my father's portrait on the table to face them. This is for him, for my father, a man who was betrayed even while he was dying. Joanne clenched her fist. Charlie, we've talked about this already. I never said everything, I interrupted. I stayed silent because I was collecting evidence. Now I have it. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into the laptop set beside me. The screen displayed images, the missing will, messages between Joanne and Carl Madsen, wire transfers, and finally, the audio recording of her voice with Carl. That document cannot surface. It would ruin everything. Joanne went pale. Liam turned to her. What is this? I turned to him. You don't know? My mother colluded with her lover to erase my father's revised will. That's how she walked away with nearly half the estate that was meant for me. Joanne snapped. Charlie, I did it for you. I was thinking about your future. You're not mature enough to... I slammed my hand on the table. Don't insult me any further. You did it out of greed, and because you knew my father had finally seen you for who you really were. I faced Liam, my tone cool and unwavering. And you... Did you know about this? He shook his head, lips pressed tight. No. I swear. Good, then you'll find the rest even more interesting. I moved on to the next part of the presentation. Contracts Liam had signed with altered terms. Falsified reports he'd submitted to partners. And finally, an email thread between him and a financial advisor where he claimed to be the mastermind behind projects my father had actually negotiated. I sent full copies to Darrell and Myers, to Archer Group, and to the investment board I once recommended you to. I locked eyes with him. By tomorrow morning, you won't be someone any company in the Bennett network wants to be associated with. Liam shot to his feet. You really did this to me? I just made sure you faced the consequences of what you did. The room fell silent. Only Mendelssohn played softly in the background, like rain, tapping gently on an old coffin lid. No more words. I closed the laptop and ended the performance. Dinner is over. Liam. Your belongings have been moved to a hotel near the airport. Joanne, I had the lawyer freeze your secondary credit card. You still have the apartment and just enough to live on. Don't call me again. Through that final dinner, no one ever returned to the house in Evanston. Except the cleaning crew I hired to pack what remained. I had made the arrangements. Liam got to keep the house just as he once begged for something to start over with. As for my mother, she was given full ownership of a small apartment in Skokie and a cash sum sufficient to last 10 years if she lived modestly. Liam signed the divorce papers just 3 days later. No litigation, no demands. He showed up in a wrinkled suit looking dazed like he hadn't slept. Words were few. I looked him in the eye and asked, "Do you want anything else, besides what I've already given you?" "No, I know I've lost the right to ask for anything." I signed. 2 copies, one for me, one for him. As I stood to leave the attorney's office, Liam suddenly called out, "Charlie." I turned. He gave a faint smile, eyes red. "Thanks for not turning this into a public mess, even if I deserved it. I didn't do it for you. People eventually see filth for what it is. No help needed." We walked out of the building in separate directions. From that moment on, Liam drifted out of my life like a satellite that had lost its pull, quietly, without fanfare. With my mother, things didn't end so cleanly. She didn't disappear, at least not emotionally. In the first week after that dinner, I received 5 texts, 3 calls, 2 emails, then came a handwritten envelope, delivered to my new apartment in Lakeview East. Inside was a photo of the 3 of us during a camping trip in Michigan. Me at 17, and my father still alive. On the back, a single handwritten line. "I destroyed everything, but the memories remain. For you. When you're ready." I placed the photo in a drawer. I didn't tear it, I didn't reply. I no longer hated her, but she was no longer my mother in any way I used to understand. Some relationships, once they cross certain lines, can never return to their original form. She had no place in the life I was building next. I used to think forgiveness was noble, that it helped lighten the heart. But I've learned, sometimes the lightest thing is accepting that some people don't belong in your next chapter. I started clearing out the past quietly, deleted photos from social media, removed posts featuring Liam or my mother, cut ties with every old partner Liam had once been involved with. I transferred all financial records under the name of the Edward Foundation, now fully operational, with a mission rooted in financial transparency and ethical corporate governance. I was listed as CEO, working directly with startups whose core value was integrity, something my father lived by, and ultimately died defending. Each morning, I walked through the park near my home, not lost in the question, why did they do this to me, but focused on a new one. What will I build next? I began to find myself again, not a shattered version of someone betrayed, but a woman rebuilding her life by her own design. I rebuilt myself, slowly, deliberately, on my own terms. I sold the Evanston house by the end of summer, a few weeks after transferring all the assets under my name. That house had once symbolized belonging, warm dinners with my father, sunny Sundays filled with laughter. Now, I couldn't even walk past that kitchen without seeing Joanne and Liam, a stain that no scrubbing could erase. The real estate agent asked if I was sure I wanted to sell it so quickly. I simply said, "Holding on to a house full of pain is the fastest way to kill gratitude for the past." I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment near Central Park, on the 6th floor, with a balcony overlooking golden leaves in the fall. It wasn't big, it wasn't lavish, but it was mine, completely and unquestionably. Every morning, I brewed coffee, opened the window, and let the sound of the city below remind me that I was alive. Not just existing, but truly alive. The Edward Foundation began to grow. Its full name, the Edward Bennett Foundation for Ethics and Transparency in Business. I served as both executive director and lead spokesperson. Arthur's legal team helped vet applications from startups seeking funding or mentorship. I set one non-negotiable rule. We funded no liars, no opportunists, and no polished masks covering greed. At first, many in the traditional investment world dismissed me. Just another rich girl playing social justice. I didn't argue, I worked, met with young founders, attended independent entrepreneurship forums, and spoke the only language that couldn't be denied: preparation and real understanding. 3 months later, Edward Foundation had 3 funded projects mentioned in the press. Not for the dollar amounts, but for the ethical standards we upheld. One of them was a green tech firm founded by 3 women, previously rejected in 4 funding rounds for lacking pedigree. I saw myself in them. Underestimated for not following the conventional path. One afternoon, during a legal team meeting at the office, Arthur walked in with a rare smile on his weathered face. Edward Bennett's daughter has finally done what he always hoped, turned money into responsibility. I didn't say anything. Because honestly, I didn't need anyone else to validate it, except myself. I started filtering my social circle. The invitations piled up. I stopped replying. The parties? I no longer cared to attend. I spent time with the people who genuinely cared whether I was okay. Not because they wanted something, but because they truly meant it. Old friends once close to Liam gradually disappeared from my contacts. Those who used to pat my mother's shoulder at social events stopped sending invites. I didn't feel a loss. My circle was smaller now, but more real. I learned how to live without my mother's approval, without my husband's affirming gaze. I started buying flowers from my own home every weekend, decided for myself whether I wanted a quiet day reading or to head downtown and eat alone. No more questions like, who's going with me? I go with myself. And that's enough. Sometimes, in the quiet afternoons watching sunlight fall across hardwood floors, I still miss my father. The way he arranged teacups. The way he taught me to read a financial statement like it was a treasure map. And more than anything, I miss the way he looked at me, not as a pampered daughter, but as someone worthy of carrying his legacy. Some evenings, I'd sit with Arthur just to drink tea and chat about nothing. He hadn't changed, still cautious, serious, and always ready with a sharp, perfectly timed joke. One night, he said, "Charlie, you don't have to prove anything to the world. But if anyone asks, tell them this. You lived by your principles, and no one could break that." My story isn't just about surviving betrayal from the people closest to me, it's about rebuilding myself after the collapse. I learned to stand without help, to build my values from my own hands and principles. In a world obsessed with others' opinions, I chose clarity, honesty, and peace as my compass. Because sometimes the most valuable thing isn't holding on to everything, it's knowing when to let go of the wrong people, so you can hold on to yourself. What do you think about Charlie's choices? Was she too cold, or did she fully earn the freedom she reclaimed? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories ahead.